Good morning, it's Friday, October 9th, and there was some dew last night. There's a pretty good breeze, but you can see there's quite a bit of moisture on the auger tractor and stuff, which is not necessarily a terrible thing because that means the beans might have picked up a little bit of moisture, but probably we're going to have to wait a little bit for the sun to shine to get everything dried back out again to start running. So in the meantime, I'm going to pull some samples out of some bins and see how dry the corn is, so we know whether or not to keep running the fans. So I'm in the first bin. I have mom and dad's here, so it's a 36 foot, and we're drying with just air. There's about 5,000 bushels in here right now, I believe, somewhere in that ballpark at least. So not a lot of grain depth in relation to the fan capacity, and we're kind of trying to get this dried down somewhat before we put anything on top of it. One of the problems we had last year was the corn went into the bin, not real wet, but maybe 17 to 19%, but then things froze up and got cold pretty early, and we didn't ever have very good drying or very good days where the humidity was low and the temperature was warm in order to get stuff dried down. So we ended up freezing it and then drying it this spring, and it took a long time to get the drying front pushed from the bottom to the top, because when you dry stuff, basically the air is coming in from the bottom and you have to migrate that moisture clear to the top. So you'll have a drying front that basically is sort of a wetter area, or the corn that's drying down, essentially a smaller layer that sort of migrates from the bottom to the top. But the problem that we ran into, especially last year, is that to get the top dry, we ended up over drying the bottom, which means you're losing bushels as far as what you sell at the elevator because you dry it down too much when you could have been selling water. So kind of trying to avoid that if we can this year. I've got about 5,000 in this one and then about 5,000 in the 36 foot bin on another farm. So I'm going to check those, and then we also haven't sampled the drying bin since we shut it off and cooled it down, so I want to kind of make sure we know where that's at. I think we got it about where we want it, but haven't actually verified that lately, so I'm going to double check that as well. You can usually kind of tell just by walking around how far you sink in, and my gut feeling is that this is still fairly wet, at least on top. The last corn just went into this on Tuesday morning, and some of that was close to 20%, so I think this one probably is going to have a little ways to go. The other 36 foot bin we put into last Thursday, so it's had a little over a week and pretty good drying weather this week, and maybe it was a little bit drier than at least the top grain in this one, so it might be where we can shut the fans off until we put some more corn in it. But we're going to pull a sample and see what it tests. So basically what I'm going to do is just walk around a few different spots and stick my hand underneath the surface a little bit, grab a handful and put it in that Ziploc bag and take it out. The other thing that we can kind of use to see where that drying front is something that we can stick down into the grain. So you can feel the drying front, which I sort of felt a hard spot, but I wasn't sure if it was a drying front or just some differences in moisture or just the depth of the grain. But it could be that the drying front is, what's that, 18 inches down, 2 feet down, which is also very plausible. But we usually kind of keep one of these in all the bins so that we can sort of see if there's any hard spots or whatever below the surface and be able to tell when it dries down. And we'll tuck that behind the top of the ladder up there so that it doesn't get buried when the bin is full of corn, but we can grab it whenever we want. We're in the drying bin now. So this bin has a burner that uses propane to heat the air, and then also a stirrator, which basically these screws just pull the grain up from the bottom to the top and basically mix up the grain that's in the bin so that you end up with uniformly mixed moisture in the end. And you can kind of see there's spots on the wall here, which some of it might be where the stirrator mounted up, but when you put corn in at 20% or so, which is what this went in at, it will like visibly shrink as you get it dry. So probably when this was full, the grain level was up here, and we've shrunk it a foot down the sidewall just as a function of removing that water from the kernels. But basically with the heater we can dry faster and are less dependent on weather conditions of the ambient temperature and humidity and everything. anymore I plant a lot of shorter season corn that should dry down pretty decent in the field, but if we have a year where we don't accumulate the heat units, or we have longer season corn that doesn't finish off, or have a cooler fall, that it doesn't dry down in the field, basically we can run everything through this and transfer it into the other bins if we need to. Also notice walking around in this bin, I'm sinking in almost up to my knees, which would make it appear, at least anecdotally, that the corn in here is quite a bit drier than that other bin. Man, bin number 3 now, and it seems dry-ish. Maybe it's dry on the outside and not in the middle is my fear, because it's a little bit deeper. Pretty sure that when this bin was put up, the people who put it up, or I'm not sure if the people that did the erection screwed it up or if it's the supplier, but pretty sure that spreader is not set to the size of bin this is, and it's spreading way short of the wall. So that's the other thing that I got to look into while I'm over here, is crawl back up there again and look at that chute, because I think that thing should be extended out, and I think there's a pretty high likelihood that I'm missing a piece that we need to make it the configuration that it should be for this size bin. Okay, so we're up on top of the bin now. I don't know if I can get it to show up on the video. The way you adjust this for different bin widths, from what I can tell looking at the directions, there's, I can get where I can point at it. There's bolts right there that hold that bottom section of the chute onto this top piece. And there's 3 sets of holes. It looks like we're on the bottom set. There's a middle set and one up here. Basically, this should be there. And there is a piece I'm missing that we need to extend this rib to direct that grain farther down so that it throws it farther out. This is my not amused face. You know that saying, if you want something done right, you should do it yourself? Unfortunately, seems to apply. Like I said, not sure if it's the people that sold the bin or the people that put the bin up, but it's gonna be kind of hard to fix that right now because it's hanging 20 feet in the air above 5 feet of grain. I don't know how much that thing weighs, but I don't know that it would be a lot of fun to drag out the top. May try and make that their problem, because not my screw up. Probably I'm gonna be the one that gets to fix it though. It's about 9:30, well 9:40 maybe. We're at the field, got the grain cart moved out on top of the hill where I'm gonna want it later, and we're gonna run some of these straight rows up here by the road to get the truck full and get it headed to town. Things are still a little bit tough, but I'm gonna try it and see if I'm getting the beans knocked out or not. I've been having to run the cylinder pretty tight anyway, just on account of, it seems like, I think it's mostly because the stems are tough even though the beans are super dry. Because if I run it very far open, it growls a lot, and basically you hear the engine change load, which is not ideal. So we're gonna try them and see if we're getting the beans knocked out, and either gonna run or hopefully we'll be running shortly if they're not quite fit yet. But I'm just gonna go probably, well, I don't know, I might go all the way to the road, but I might just go 100 feet or so too and see what things look like. It's right around noon now and things are going pretty smoothly. I got a little bit of a slow start. The beans were dry and the pods were mostly dry, but there were a few that we were having trouble getting knocked out. But the bigger problem was that the stuff on the ground, the leaves and stuff that had fallen off the plants, as well as kind of the stems for the leaves, the little vine stuff that you see laying around, was really tough and was one to push underneath the head or ball up and basically not feed the beans into the combine. So we ended up sort of twiddling our thumbs for a little bit. Got the cutter bar checked over pretty close, I guess. Replaced a section on this end where we kind of had a little bit of problems, or sorry, a guard rather, because the guard that was on there seemed a little bit worn. Maybe should have replaced a couple sections in spots, but where the ones I saw that were a little bit questionable aren't spots that have been causing problems, I guess. So we are now rolling, and basically up to full speed, I think. maybe not quite as fast as we were on part of the day yesterday, but things are going well. I've got some little patches out here in the middle, mostly on top of some terraces here. There's a terrace that kind of winds around, has a bunch of sharp bends in it. That's not the most convenient, but the good thing is that this farm, when it was converted to row crop, was all the conservation work was done then. So most of the topsoil is still here, and you can definitely tell a difference in the yields. But I'm hoping that we can get the rest of this knocked out. I don't know if I'm probably not going to do any very artsy video work today, because I'm trying to kind of scramble and get this finished up, because I've got some stuff that I would like to be able to get out here a little bit early today for. If something goes sideways, it's not super critical, but got to wear a tux tomorrow for the DJ job, and I'm hoping to make it to the rehearsal for the wedding that we're doing sound for. So try to take videos when I can, but they're probably going to be from the cab today, and then we'll see kind of what next week brings. I don't know if we'll run Sunday or not. There are some chances of rain in the forecast. Not sure what's going to happen with that. Wouldn't hurt if the beans got some rain on them. They aren't quite as dry today as they were a lot of the day yesterday, or at least the monitor in my combine isn't saying they're quite as dry, but they're still plenty dry. And if they got rained on and then we got to combine some 13% beans again, that will help our yield a little bit, because we always like to sell water when we can. So when I took the video last night, I made a joke about not running any terrace intakes through the head. Right after I stopped the video, I just about did. No harm done, thankfully. But I couldn't see squat because the wind was behind me and that heater house fan bearing went out, so I didn't have anything sucking the dust away. And you can kind of see how the beans are cut over in here. Hard for me to see on the tiny screen. But basically, all of a sudden I had a orange intake right there. And sort of, I think there's a mark on the intake. We looked at it earlier this morning. There's a mark on the intake where I think it hit the guard on the sickle cutter bar, and kind of whacked it a few times with the reel, but seems like no harm done, so that's good news. This is one of those times when the dust diverter fan would be kind of nice to have. Probably not worth burning the combine up to have that thing spinning, though. Getting very close to the end. Unfortunately, this isn't the last pass, but you'll see the last pass when I get turned around. Had a little spot over here. There used to be a pond over in this area where the dirt piles that you maybe can see are. And basically combined about 12 acres to get 2.5 acres worth of soybeans. So that didn't go super quick, but we're getting there. It's about 2:30. Should be done by 2:45, I think. So we actually, I think, got here. Today is Friday. Did we spend, 3 days basically, exactly. I think. I don't know. I lost track. Anyway, we're getting there. No, it was Wednesday that we came. We got this done in basically 2 days, because we started at about 2 o'clock Wednesday, I believe, something like that. I don't know. Days run together after so long, but we're getting there. Basically, I have to make it back to the road, and there's going to be a little jag there where I kind of turned wide to not run into the pickup when I was getting into the last pass, but it should be done very momentarily.